Welcome to Part the System with Daniel Ristic. How are you, Daniel?
Well, thanks. Doing well. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. So a little bit about you. Daniel is the Manager of Government Relations, Funding and Infrastructure at Football New South Wales. He's overseen the production of strategic documentation to support the advocacy for facility investment at a local, state and federal government levels at Football New South Wales. With over 15 years' experience in the sport and local government sector, Daniel has a strong understanding of the sport landscape at the community level. And in previous roles, Daniel's worked at local councils in their respective sport and recreation units. He managed assets on sporting fields and acted as client delivery of a diverse capital works programme. Daniel holds a Bachelor of Management in Leisure and is a graduate certificate in management. So welcome, Daniel. I'm really excited to chat with you today. Football's, if I can say it, my favourite sport, or soccer as we say over here. So yeah, we'll get into it. There's this thing called well-being. What does it mean to you?
Yeah, I guess it's such a big thing now, I think, as well. Well-being, I guess, for me, it's probably has three factors from a physical, obviously, component as well, and certainly being in the football space, getting active and seeing kids and adults being active, on the field it is certainly part of that. Health well-being is, I guess, as part of that as well. But certainly the mental aspect, I think, has certainly been highlighted over the last few years, certainly through the COVID period that we've been through and the lockdowns. I think that mental aspect certainly has been highlighted, and certainly those three together is all part of being that well-being, and having all those three together, I think certainly helps everyone. I think if we can all get our health, get our physical activity up, that's going to help our mental well-being. I think all that comes together as one.
Yeah, so it's all connected, is what you're saying there. And what are some of the things that you do to look after your well-being? Except playing football.
Yeah, I do a little bit of football, but not much these days, unfortunately, with two ACL knee reconstructions. That's taken me off the field, but we try and have a bit here at work at Football New South Wales. We try and do a bit of run around, play a bit of futsal at our futsal court here. With the staff, as again, but part of well-being, certainly for the staff to get out and have a kick about. Once a week, hopefully, ideally, is what we try to get to, if we can get all the people together. But that's limited for me. I still put the boots on, but the skill level and the activity not as the greatest with some bad knees. But certainly from a personal aspect, I don't mind some bike riding from a physical standpoint. I don't mind getting out. Certainly I live in the hills area of Sydney, and there's a number of really good bike tracks around that we can just an opportunity to get out for an hour or so. Certainly mostly during probably the summer and spring, probably from a personal standpoint, bit slack, I think, during the winter period that we've had now, and the cold weather and the rain. I probably haven't strapped on and jumped on the bike for a while, but certainly as we move into the warm months, that's kind of one of the big things. Bit of walking here and there as well. I don't mind. I see with my knees, not the kind of the sport aspect has probably decreased, but certainly just those basic, walking and bike riding as an opportunity to get out and get some vitamin D and get some physical activity into me.
Yeah. And what about walking football? Because I've seen Football New South Wales win multiple awards that would link in your passion of walking and football, maybe?
Potentially, yeah. I think it is targeted to the older age group, but I'm slowly getting there, I guess. But yeah, that's certainly a real good opportunity. I think that's why walking football has been it's been so big in the UK, obviously, where it kind of obviously originated from, and now it's been picked up here in Australia and across the world. I think it keeps people in the game, and those players, male or female, that are getting too old to play the 11-a-side game that they would have been playing for most of their lives. All those players, similar to myself, that have got injured, and running is not the best for them. The opportunity to still play the great game, the world game of football, but in a different capacity, I think is certainly a really good opportunity for likes of me and others to stay involved in the game, because it's such a it does become people's lives and livelihoods. I think people getting involved at such a young age, and then continuing that till as old as they can.
Yeah, it's great. And tell us a bit about your story, really, Daniel. Obviously, you've been working in football for a number of years, but yeah, just a bit of background and anything that comes up for you, really.
Yeah, I guess football has been part of my life for a number of years. I started playing football when I was about 6 years old. Got introduced at the local club. My parents got a European background. My parents a Serbian background, so my dad was a big football fan. So yeah, got involved at football at a really young age. Played for 16, 17 years until unfortunately my knees, a couple of knee reconstructions back to back, which kind of halted from a playing career. Nothing of.
What was the distance? What was the time frame between both the ACL reconstructions?
About 12 months really. So I
Wow.
did the first one, did the rehab, and in pretty much the first game I came back. Was playing futsal at the time. It kind of went again, not as bad as the first time, but certainly had re-ruptured it, and that kind of halted any play for a while. It took me a while to get back again to going back to have surgery again, etc. So I didn't really play the game at all for a while until I got the surgery done again, which kind of held off for a couple of years and thought I was concentrating a bit more on my career than just getting into my career from that perspective. So yeah, as I was leaving the field as such, had just come out of uni, did a Bachelor of Leisure in Sport Management. So kind of got into that. Yeah, I knew from an early, I guess from that high school age, that I wanted to get into sport in some way, shape or form. And so hence the chosen degree. That was probably, I think one of the, from memory, I think it was the second year that course had run. So just that sport management, early 2000s, when I did my course, that's when sport management was starting to be introduced into the university sector. So that was a good opportunity. So it was really kind of raw, I think, from a uni's perspective. Obviously, that's changed now that we're in 2022, and the number of courses that are being offered for sport management and sport marketing, all that kind of stuff that's being offered now, and exercise physiology, etc. That's increased now, which is great to see. And I think a lot of people obviously jumping on board, and there are people that want to, be involved in sport in some way, shape, or form. So yeah, well, I guess I was part of that early introduction into sport. 3-year course there at UTS. Got my first job in baseball. I was working for
baseball.
Yeah, baseball. New South Wales was my first gig in the sporting industry, which was a new sport to me. I knew nothing about the sport at all. I don't think I'd even watched a game, to be honest. I knew briefly about it in the US, but nothing about it here in Australia, New South Wales at all. So
how did you go with the job interview if you hadn't, didn't know anything about the sport?
Well, it actually worked well, because the CEO at the time was kind of a bit of almost a restructure of the organisation. Baseball's a fairly smaller sport in New South Wales. It is the biggest in the country in terms of the states, but certainly minor participation compared to the big sports in here in New South Wales. But the CEO at the time was looking for someone that was kind of fresh, had no ties with baseball, had a bit of a sport background as such, with a bit of uni experience, etc., but didn't want anyone that had any baseball knowledge, was not part of the politics and all that kind of stuff. So I was kind of almost in the right place at the right time, and started a job there as a communications and competitions coordinator for the sport. And that was, looking back at it now, was probably one of the best decision for me to apply, but B, and I thank the CEO, and I still stay in touch with him every so often now, is that kind of obviously got me that foot in the door from a sport management perspective, but it opened my eyes to what sport was all about. And being a staff that had 4 people running the state of
Wow,
New South
that's not a
Wales
lot
for
of
baseball.
resources.
Yeah, and so my title said communications and competitions, but there was events management, there was judiciary, there was a whole raft of jobs that I end up doing as part of that website management. So it really gave me a really good insight into the world of sport and how it worked here in New South Wales, I think, and how sport operated. So I really got to know the sport fairly well in my just shy of 5 years I was there. So yeah, got to run all the elite competitions in New South Wales from both junior to senior competitions. Did a lot of the communications marketing of the sport as well and assisted with that. So yeah, it was really a really good job that I look back now and think that really helped me continue my sport passion here. So yeah, I guess 5 years there at Baseball New South Wales. Then I jumped over to on the other side of the fence, I guess, into local council, and had 2 roles in it's Sutherland Shire Council and the City of Ryde, so 2 councils in Sydney.
Mm-hmm.
Again, so an opportunity, I guess, to see the sport still be part of the sport landscape, but on the other side of the fence and working with councils and working with a multitude of sports, but from the other side. So it really gave me an opportunity to kind of see the sport from 2 different angles, I think. And, when you're living in the sporting world and today I'm in football, but kind of have a football lens on at all times, and most of the time, should I say. So having that council perspective when you're working with everything from football to bocce to motor car racing to whatever it might be, the sports that are in that area, it certainly opens your eyes about how the councils operate and what they need to deal with when they're dealing with sports as well.
And what would you say one of the big differences is from a perspective piece around, when you're in a local government setting, or you're working in a sport?
I guess from a local government perspective, you're looking to work with everyone and I guess help everyone and please everyone. I think that's the difficult part when you've got multiple asks from every single sport. Like I said, whether it's from football, AFL, to baseball, to softball, to motor car racing, everyone's got different needs and wants. And I think managing that from a council perspective can be difficult in sometimes. And we know. Space, particularly for sport, is a big issue, particularly in Sydney, and in a Sydney. So that's one of the biggest issues there from a council, is trying to manage all that and put that all in the right place. And I think when you're working for an individual sport, you're certainly you're looking for the best and the benefit for that one individual sport. You're not always looking at other sports and what they're doing. So yeah, I think that council perspective has helped me in football now, working with other sports and trying to bring other sports into, particularly from an infrastructure perspective, and that I'm in now, is that football does share a lot of venues with other sports, and so the ability to kind of work and know what they require, what does football require, and trying to work together to find that piece. So yeah, a couple of years with council, with those 2 councils, about 4 or 5 years I think total between the 2 of them, and then got myself a role here at Football New South Wales. So I've just been here for just only last week, just past 6 years now at the organisation. So wow. Yeah, it's flown by. Certainly, it's been a great experience. And starting a number of years ago now, and just in a facilities coordinator role with a team of 3 of us when I first started, and working with our clubs. I guess from a council perspective, I really had a good feel of what clubs required, I think, and what councils could do for clubs. So I think that helped me in my role initially. Certainly being at those 2 councils, I'd worked with a number of our football associations before, so I had a bit of an eye on what those associations within football were already doing, having a bit of football experience in terms of playing as well during my time as well. So I think that all kind of culminated well, and coming to work for a sport that I've loved for so long and have been involved in some way, shape or form since 4 or 5 years old. So now working in the government relations and in the infrastructure space, and working with our clubs to improve our facilities, I guess, is a big thing for us. And having enough facilities and the quality and the quantity is a big issue for football, and helping our clubs achieve those goals they set from an infrastructure perspective. It's been really great, and some great stories that I've seen in my time now, and seeing those clubs that community level that have put their heart and soul into their club, and then achieving those goals of building new amenity buildings, or having their field lit up with lights for the first time. Those kind of stories, not everyone sees that, but the people that have been working in those clubs for such a long time, they pour a lot of passion and a lot of time, a lot of volunteer hours goes into that club for some of these people. So yeah, it's great to be involved and kind of share their stories, help them through their journey from an infrastructure perspective, and guide them into the places to ideally find some funding for their club through the time. So yeah, it's certainly a great job now that I get to work in, like I said at the start, I get to in a sport that I do love, and contribute in some way, shape or form to make the sport better.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was great to hear your background there, Daniel, and baseball and councils, and what led you to the jackpot, which is working for Football New South Wales, for somebody that's passionate about football. I'm interested. You said you've been working there 6 years, and you had 3 people then on you. How many have you got now? Has it grown, the team?
Unfortunately, it's probably going the reverse.
Right.
From particularly, I think from due to COVID, I think, and those reasons, I think we've seen the team shrink. And at the moment, it's actually only myself that's in that government relations and infrastructure space. In saying that, we're about to have a new person come on board with our World Cup that's coming on board. We got a New South Wales Legacy Fund that has allowed us to employ a few additional people in the area, and one of those spaces will be in the facility in that grant space to help our club. So that person will join team very shortly. So it'll be fantastic to have another person on board to assist with that. So I think it's fairly important for us. I think a number of sports would say is that infrastructure is the key to a lot of the participation in getting people playing, is that we need spaces and places to play. So infrastructure does play a big part in our world. So having another person to assist us and working with our clubs will be great. So that'll be fantastic.
And tell us then, and you talked a little bit about infrastructure, but where does Football New South Wales sit within the sport and the wider system?
Yeah, I think football in New South Wales plays a big part, I think, in the system. And I guess we kind of touched on it at the start, is that people are playing the game. We're getting people out and about and on the field, and that, whether that's physically playing the game, whether that's indoors from a futsal perspective, whether it's outdoors, 11 aside, whether it's summer soccer, 5v5, 6v6, we're getting people out on the field playing physical activity. I think that's a key, and that's what we're here to do. Our aim is to grow and develop and promote the game that we have to our stakeholders, to our football family. So we've got a big job to do. We've got a large participation base. We've got over almost 230,000 registered participants on the winter side, almost 50,000 playing in the summer as well. So there's a number of players, young and old, male and female, playing the game. And I think we're playing a part in those people keeping their physical activity up, being involved, even from a volunteer perspective, whether they don't play, but still involved from a volunteer perspective. I think that also plays a part in people's, we said about the well-being of that mental, may not be so much physical playing the game, but they're socially, they're being included as part of a team when they're part of a committee, volunteering, whether it's cooking sausages, they're being part of a team. So I think that all creates a great system that we've got here, that we can help people all over the country and all over the state continue their well-being moving forward, I think, as well. That's pretty important for them. So I think we certainly do play a part, and we'll continue, I think, as the largest sport in the state, as we have those people they're really wanting to participate. So we need to provide a product for them and provide a safe and a great place for them to come and enjoy themselves. So yeah, we certainly do play a part in that, I think.
And some of those numbers you talked about there, Daniel, have we bounced back from pre-COVID? Like where are we at?
Yeah, certainly. I think we're probably, as of this year, I think we were just, if we go back to 2019, so the prior to COVID, I think we're a tick over 230, I think it might have been. So I think we're only a little bit short now of what we were in certainly this year in 2022. So I think again, we certainly moved up. I think we saw that we didn't have a massive drop during the COVID period. We certainly did have a little drop off, but I think minor. Really, we saw that as soon as sport was allowed to come back, that people certainly wanted to play the sport. And in that first 2020, that first COVID period, we didn't start the season. That's right, from memory. That's right. So a lot of people kind of had a choice to make. They had signed up because our registrations do start in January and February, so everyone almost had signed up. But then we couldn't actually start the season in April when we normally do, and there was obviously a hold off and wait, and then we really get started until June, July. And so by that time, for various reasons, obviously kids and families decided not to play. And I think certainly from a financial perspective, I think that would have been probably a major one in a lot of areas, particularly if mum and dad had been stood down and just unable to afford to participate in any way, shape or form. So we probably saw, again, a minor drop, but we didn't have a huge drop at all during that time. I think we had a number of regional associations that decided it was going to be too difficult to actually run the entire season, so they just decided not to run the season. But I think most areas got as many games of football as possible through that COVID period. And again, in 2021, where we started the season, but we didn't get to finish the season. So people were eager to play again in 2021. So that was fantastic to see, people wanting to play the game. Not being able to finish wasn't ideal, but we didn't really have a choice with all the government restrictions, etc. So that was paused. But again, as soon as we were allowed to come back from a summer football perspective, we saw people wanting to play the game. So, and again, this year, so very close to that pre-2019 participation numbers, and I think we'll continue to grow. Certainly, I think we've got a big step coming forward in terms of we've got a men's, the Socceroos are about to go into a men's World Cup in November in Qatar. We have a female World Cup right here on our doorstep in Australia next year. So I think over the next, 12 to 24 months, I think we're going to see those numbers, I guess, surpass 2019, I think, with more people playing the game.
Yeah, I suppose then that puts pressure on infrastructure and venues and capacity. So, that's a systems problem, isn't it? It's like there's a leverage point at one side where you're trying to build more participation, but then it's, there's unintended consequences with, venues being probably overused and more infrastructure needed, etc. So, but I'll leave that one for the second. And you touched on it, the fact that we've got a World Cup in Qatar for men. For the men's, we've got the Women's World Cup that'll be here in 2023, I think, and also in New Zealand. So how is Football New South Wales making the most of, this unbelievable opportunity that we've got ahead of us?
Yeah, you're right. It is an unbelievable opportunity to have a World Cup in our backyard. Potentially once in a lifetime type stuff that happens. The first World Cup that we're going to hold here. From a women's perspective, the women's game is growing, has been growing for a number of years, and now to kind of almost culminate that with a World Cup in our backyard, it's a fantastic opportunity. 2023 is going to be big. We're going to have 64 games of football across New Zealand and Australia, half in New Zealand, half in Australia. Going to start between July and August. It's going to be a fantastic event here for Australia and New Zealand. I don't think probably a lot of people probably not in football probably don't understand the enormity of this event yet until it kind of hits us in 2023. So I think that'll be exciting. I think there'll be a big buzz around the venue. People that have been to World Cups in other parts of the world will tell you how much of a carnival atmosphere it is at that time. I think we'll see similar here in Australia. Sydney and New South Wales probably fairly lucky in the fact we're going to have 11 games out of the 64, which is the most out of any state. So that's going to be, I guess, exciting from our perspective. But from what the World Cup is going to bring to us here in New South Wales, we've worked fairly diligently and hard with the Office of Sport and the New South Wales government in achieving a New South Wales Football Legacy Fund of $10 million here in New South Wales. So that's going to be a real injection of funding for us. So that's going towards some grant funding, which is currently we have a grant open, the New South Wales Football Legacy Fund, which we have $5 million worth of funding for infrastructure upgrades for our football clubs. We've got 1.2 million in participation funds as well for female participation and increasing female participation over the next few years. So that's, I guess, where the benefit of us, the legacy fund that the government has provided the sport, we've got a really good opportunity to use that funding from a grant perspective and touch on the infrastructure perspective a bit more. Is that we mentioned space is a big issue. Quality and quantity of football fields across New South Wales is one of our big things that we identified in our New South Wales infrastructure strategy that we completed just a few years ago now, and having the opportunity now with this legacy fund and $5 million to inject into the sport and the facilities, I think is going to be a really good opportunity for our clubs to increase lighting, renovate fields that are in poor condition. A big one is female-friendly change rooms and referee rooms, all that kind of stuff, that these venues that have been built some 40, 50 years ago, if not more, don't really meet the need of football today and what it does. These buildings that were built at the local fields were built predominantly for males because they were playing the sport at that time and there weren't many females. That has certainly changed over the last 40, 50 years, and females are certainly well and truly part of the sport now. From a New South Wales perspective, 25% of our participation base now is female, so that number continues to grow, and so we need to make sure we have the right facilities for them to participate, to be safe and secure, to go into a change room, be able to get changed in, etc. So this fund is certainly there to help and assist our clubs, work with our local councils to upgrade those fields to ensure that as we just said, we do have a World Cup. We're going to probably get an increase in participation. Football Australia have done some modelling, and they believe over the next during and post the World Cup, there could be in excess of 50,000 extra female participants in the game. So we need space for them to play here in New South Wales, and so infrastructure is a big part of that. And we don't want to get to the stage where we have to be turning away boys and girls because we just don't have enough space or the right quality or the capacity to hold them at these venues. So yeah, we need to make sure that we're building the facilities that's going to last for the next 12, 10, 20, 30, 40 years that they can continue participating in.
Yeah, when you talk about the fact that people really don't realise how big of an event the Women's World Cup is. Like, I was in England recently when it was the European Championships, and obviously England were able to win it, and it was an incredible time in England. So I think it could be something similar here. If the home nation does well, it always helps as well, and home advantage is usually a big deal. And yeah, interesting you talking there about the modelling that Football Australia has done for the increase in participation, and because I've always looked at football over here, and the participation rates are really high, aren't they, for children, but they drop off as they get a little bit older. And there's so many different sports here, whether it's AFL or rugby league or rugby union, tennis or whatever. But yeah, why do you think that is? That they kind of that there's a bit of a drop off.
Yeah, I guess I think we're probably similar to a lot of sports. I think when kids get to that teenage age, early high school, or mid high school, things in their lives, I think, begin to change, and whether it's work commitments, whether it's concentrating on study, whether it's the location. I think we kind of find people that are located closer to beaches and all that kind of stuff. I think they begin to drop off a little during that time as well. So I certainly think we certainly do see that drop off. And how do we keep them? Is the $1 million question. We're doing what we can from a competition structure. Is it the way they train? Is it the competition times? Is it the days, or whatever it might be? There's a whole raft of different opportunities there, and I think we do see that drop off. And I think, as I said, the other sports probably see that as well. But I think the good thing about our sport is that we probably don't track it well, but I'm sure that there's a lot of those players that come back to the sport eventually as well, because I think they've grown up with the sport early on in their time, and then they come back to the sport in some way, shape, or form later on in their life. And because I guess one of the advantages of football, maybe from some of the other team sports particularly, is that you can come back and play when you're over 30, over 40. We've got competitions running at 11 aside for over 45s now. That began as an over 35 competition in most areas of Sydney and in New South Wales. But those players are continuing to play. We've got more people that are getting older, so we had to create over 45s bracket to have that competition for them. So I think we see a drop off, but I think we do see them come back. And particularly, and I look at myself, if I potentially was fit and well, I've got 2 young kids now. My eldest has just started playing football at the local club. Coaching the young fellas team over the last 2 years. But
how are you getting on?
Sorry.
How are you getting on?
Yeah, not bad. It's not bad. It was certainly the first year last year. We didn't get to finish the season because of COVID, but it was good. It was a good year. A raft of different kids playing, obviously, for the first time as well. Different athletic abilities, etc., to kind of deal with at that age. So yeah, it was certainly challenging. I've never coached before, and never really had a passion to coach. Certainly would love the game, but I've never seen myself as a coach. But having the ability to help, obviously my son and the kids, I think has changed that slightly. Certainly has given me, can see the improvement, and certainly this second year that I've coached with most of the same kids returning. You can see, I guess, the benefit of coaching and what it does to kids and how they improve, even just from the start of the season to the end of the season. And minor things like passing the ball between team members has been a big highlight for me, and seeing the boys be able to do that, it's been fantastic. And so I think the likes of when someone like me may have pause for a while. In particular, I think we see that even with the slightly older people, where they had kids and they might kind of just have a break from sport and concentrate on their kids for that early part of their lives. And then once their kids start playing, they kind of jump back into the sport. And some dads and mums certainly go back and play over 35s or whatever it might be. But in my case, I'm still involved, but I'm from a coaching perspective. So I think that that's what our sport really has, that, I guess, benefit. And we touched on walking football. You can play the game from kind of say cradle to grave almost. You can, as soon as you're able to walk, you get a ball in front of your feet, but then you can play the game till late 70s, 80s potentially. We've had some really good examples over the last few years where we've done a few highlighted some stories with local players. I think there was a female in her 70s still playing the game in Sutherland, a referee he's 80 and he's still refereeing in the sport. So there's some really good stories about those people being in the sport for so many years. In some way, shape or form, they might have played. Now they've gone into refereeing. Now they've gone into committees, whatever it might be, but they're still involved with the sport. I think that's what our sport does so well. I think we've got communities that they've built together, that they stayed together for such a long time. And because these clubs there's so many of them, I guess, across the area in a particular area, they're almost, little community towns that got their own football club, and so it really brings people together from that community, and the kids go to school together, they see each other at the shopping centre, they play together, so it really is an opportunity to bring everyone together again, and from a great physical and physical perspective, but even that social perspective, I think that is really important, a really important part of the sport as well.
Yeah, no, I moved to Germany when I was 4 years old, and the only thing that connected me with the local community there was football, because I couldn't speak the language, you know. So football's always been a big part of my life, Daniel, and I'd love to still play, but injuries for me have put pay to that. So, but my nickname when I did play was Bulldozer Burns.
Bulldozer.
So, Bulldozer Burns. So that might tell you a little bit about my playing style.
Yeah.
In centre midfield. Yes. So, but yeah, a lot of fun memories and yeah, good times.
Yes. Sir.
And just shifting gear a little bit in terms of talking a little bit about health. So we know that 1 in 2 Australians have got a chronic condition, and yeah, it's not getting any better. If you could nudge one part of the system to improve the well-being of Australians, what would that be for you?
Yeah, I guess, like I said, like that, it's a concerning stat that 1 in 2 Australians have a chronic condition. I think that mental health, aspect is really big, and if we could nudge that and I guess improve that for people, and I think we're slowly doing that. I think we did a bit of a study a couple of years ago with football in New South Wales. A bit about the economic benefit of football, the health benefit of football, and the social kind of benefits. So we kind of have obviously the same kind of the same information you just said. 1 in 2 Australians have a chronic condition, but I think we're doing our part in trying to increase that and help people getting out on the field and playing and kind of reducing that health burden on the health system by getting people to play the sport and reducing their particularly from a mental health perspective. I think that's one way certainly seen that through my life with some friends and family that have gone through some mental health issues, and I think having that ability to go out and play sport, I think football, as we kind of mentioned, provide that avenue for people to come out and play and just kind of really help them move forward from that mental health perspective and try and really help their lives. And again, it's not just that physical perspective, it's sometimes from mental, but it could be just that social being, ability to be with people and having a chat with people. And I think that's I know speaking to a lot of the older men and women in our game, particularly 35, 45-year-olds, some of them really, it's their excuse to go have a beer with some mates playing football, and that's really good. I think is a really good thing, is that they're setting aside some time in their lives, in their busy weeks that everyone has got, to ensure go out and have a beer, but go and have a kick around with some mates and play a bit of competition, have a training session once a week, just to really kind of unwind and be able to really improve themselves. And I don't think people think about it that way. They see obviously the fun and the social aspect, but certainly without it, I think people start to struggle. And I think we've seen there's many seen many examples of when the inability to play sport or do something, how it does affect people. It might not happen straight away, but certainly from you do see it. And I think getting people out there and playing is key. I think certainly. And I think the stat that I remember, I think 5% of all diseases have been attributed to inactivity of people. So if we can get people active and stop that, lower that percentage and get just people active again, it will certainly help the health system. It'll help individuals across the board, having that opportunity just to be out there and getting that, vitamin D is such a big thing that people have been speaking about, just getting people out in the sun and kicking a ball around. And might not even be kicking the ball around physically, but just getting out and about certainly does help the system, help people. If we can really kind of, I think that mental health aspect, I'm sure you'd have some really good examples, but I think that's a real big issue that we're facing, certainly in Australia, and I think probably globally as well, that mental aspect.
Yeah, it's a crisis, isn't it? Absolutely. And physical activity Yeah, it's such a great way to improve, how you're feeling and your mental health. So yeah, here. And with the last question that I've got, Daniel, we've nudged along quite quickly. Where do you see yourself personally in the system, and how do you contribute and influence it?
I guess in my role now, I see myself in from an infrastructure perspective, and I think, like I said, infrastructure plays a big role, certainly in football, but in all sports. People need a venue to play at, a safe and secure place to go to, and so I really see myself, certainly now, um, as playing a part of that and helping our clubs, our members. Do what they can to improve their facility, and that's through whether that's through grant funding, um, project ideas, etc. But I certainly, that's my experience now that I've had, and I certainly want to continue that. I think some of the real good feel stories that I've seen from clubs, and I'll probably share one of those stories from a couple of years ago that we had. The Asian Cup, like we had the Asian Cup here in 2015, and from that we had also had a legacy fund as part of that. So we had clubs apply for infrastructure upgrades. I had a club up in the Blue Mountains, Wentworth Falls, fantastic little club up there, who had I'll call it almost a shed. They would have had an old tennis shed, which was their room at their venue. It was tired and run down facility. Again, it would have been 50, 60, maybe even 70 years old. It was their change room, it was a canteen, it was everything, but it wasn't sufficient for what they had now. And so I remember going up there and presenting them with a check, and telling them that they'd been successful in their funding for $150,000 to improve their amenity building. And just the stories after that, chatting to particularly I think it was the treasurer at the time, and she'd been there for 20 years, had been there at the club, and she'd been, I guess, disenchanted and disappointed by the fact that she'd applied for a number of grants each and every year and always got the letter or the email saying you're unsuccessful. But she kept on going. Her and the club had put money away each and every year, saved up to, I guess, to contribute as part of a project moving forward. Because they had an idea. They wanted to fix their amenity building for many years, but they kind of waited. And then eventually, obviously, they got $150,000 from the Asian Cup Legacy Fund. They got some money from council. They got some money from the federal government. They had their own funding, and they built themselves a $1.2 million new amenities building. And
Wow.
going back and seeing, I went to the opening. It was in 2021 now. Going to the opening of that, and seeing those club members still there. Some of them actually had retired because they'd come back for the opening of the venue. And just to see the way I guess their faces light up when they saw that venue, I think is really, warms the heart, I guess, for me, seeing those kind of projects come to fruition from, as I said, from an old little tennis shed it might have been back in the day to now a modernized, female-friendly, their canteen now is the size of their entire building that they had previously. So the joy that brings to them now, and it lets that club now move forward, and being part of that process, I think, being part of that system for them, I think, is certainly where I see myself, and have really enjoyed being part of it. And that there's a number of other stories that I could share, but I think that's that one that kind of hits the spot, and that's where I believe, where I kind of sit in the system and helping those our community clubs, our volunteers achieve those goals of getting those facilities that they can be proud to go to, and proud to use and proud to show off to people. Because I think a lot of these venues that some of these clubs are at, unfortunately, they are in such poor condition, that they are so old that you probably wouldn't even want to use the facilities. But now that this club at Wentworth Falls Wentworth Falls Football Club they are over the moon, and they've got a fantastic facility that they're able to grow into even further have that, and it'll bring people together as well. I think those type of facilities bring more people to the sport as well, and I think we've seen that even at a local perspective where clubs get upgrades, whether it's a synthetic fields or it's new lights or something. That club after the next year or two certainly sees a bit of a spike in numbers, and I think because we've got clubs that are so close to each other. We've got numerous clubs in every local council area that there's a lot of choice for people out there. And so if people can see a better facility and choose from two venues almost side by side, they're going to always choose the facility that looks better and is more modern, I think, and provides that security and safety for them. So, yeah, I think that's where I kind of sit in helping those clubs and associations across the state build a better place for people to come together and to increase their well-being in some way, shape, or form.
What a beautiful example of how infrastructure and these assets can, like you said, bring a community together, and how important it is for that social connection. And I can't wait to next time I'm up the Blue Mountains, I'll be going to the Wentworth Falls Club and having a look at that. Must be some amenities building for 1.2. Was there anything else? Was there anything else in there as well, or is there any rooms for coach education or anything like that?
It is, yes, because it's a 2-story building now. It's got change rooms, storage, canteen. It's got a club room there that they use. So yeah, it's certainly it's transformational from a club perspective, and a number of clubs already have that across the state. But there's a number of clubs that don't have anything close to what they have. So they're quite lucky in the fact what they have now. And so yeah, certainly a huge project, remarkable how it can transform a club and the people within there, and it can just almost reinvigorates. And I think it's a good example as well. I spoke about the treasurer, and she'd been there for 20 odd years, and a lot of clubs can get disenchanted, individuals can get disenchanted, which is fair enough if you apply for so many grants and try and not be successful. But I guess that's one of the big things that I'm always, I guess, preaching to our clubs from a funding perspective is, you can be lucky enough to get funding, but some people, it's like a 20 or 30% ratio of getting being successful in a grant. So sometimes you do have to apply multiple times to get your project, but I guess it's a really good example of perseverance for a club to continue. If they've got a plan, to stick to it, it'll eventually come to you. You just got to be patient with what you do. And they've seen that benefit of some resilience from the club members and the treasurer, continuing putting money away to the side to help contribute to a facility like that is such a fantastic story in that itself as well. They've got a club to run, but they've obviously had an idea and have got a goal to achieve, and they did that. It took them 20 years, longer than most people that wanted to probably last for. But that's what they did, and they've come at the end of that tunnel and have got a facility that's fantastic.
Oh, that's it. They would have they got it in the beginning. It would have been a 20-year-old facility now, but now they've got a contemporary, state of the art, clubhouse. So, that's a really lovely way to kind of end the conversation, Daniel. And in terms of that persistence, I think for clubs to continue, writing grants or whatever it may be. Is there anything that we've missed that you'd like to add as we wrap up?
I think we've spoken I guess fairly well about the well-being. I think that football does play in the wider area, I think, and the wider of people. I think we are a large sport. We're doing our bit, just like all the other sports are. But because we've got a big participation base, we do touch a lot of people, whether that's from a participant perspective, a volunteer perspective. So, we certainly are playing a big role in what we do, and we'll continue to do that. I think as the sport here in Australia continues to grow, and I said it is the biggest sport from a participation base, but we've still got a lot of work to do from at the national level. Hopefully, one day we'll see a Matildas, in the upcoming World Cup get to a final of a World Cup, that'll be fantastic. Our Socceroos are playing in Qatar in a couple of months' time. You know, hopefully in our lifetime we'll see the Socceroos get closer and, you know, participate and play against the big players in Europe and South America. So I think we can. I think it's just going to take some time. It's a generational thing almost, I think, from a football perspective, and it's growing. Will continue to grow. Our players will get better, and we might be able to see some of that achievement at that very high level. But I think our Matildas certainly have got the biggest chance for us in the short term, I think, where they sit, if they can get it together. And like you said, with the home crowd, similar to what the UK girls did for the Euros, I think that will certainly give them that extra that push while they're here in Sydney and across the country playing in front of their home crowds, that hopefully we can see them reach you know, the likes of the quarters and the semi-finals, and ideally a final at Stadium Australia when on the 20th of August when that grand final gets played. So if we have them there, that'll be certainly exciting.
And so, that in, you've heard it here first from Football New South Wales, Australia in the final.
Yes.
Brilliant. Well, I loved our chat, talking about football and learning more about yourself, you know, going under the hood a little bit in terms of your experience and and all the great work that you guys are doing. And it's obviously a really exciting time for football across the country. So yeah, thanks a lot, Daniel. And I hope to see you in person soon.
Excellent. Thanks very much, David. Cheers.
Talk to you soon. Cheers, mate.
Bye.
Bye.